Come on. Hello, everyone. It's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, you can see me back here with the green screen, and because there's not anything up, you pretty much know that I am having an interview. I have an amazing guest with me who's been here once before. I have with me Cynthia McKinney. She is an American politician and activist currently teaching in North South University in Bangladesh, and the books to her credit include How the United States Creates Shithole Countries. Oh, that's awesome. Ain't Nothing Like Freedom, and the Illegal War on Libya. Mrs. McKinney or Professor McKinney, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamarl.
Absolutely. I'm always enamored when somebody who's been behind the scenes comes on the show, because it's like, it's one thing for me to have a hypothesis on what I think is taking place. It's like, based on the incentives that are going on in the situation, I think this is going on. But there's no way to know all of the drives and incentives that are built into the people who are going behind a certain thing, who've taken actions. So the thing that's come up is the Mueller report. That's the most recent news that you just so happened to land on the show, as that it's exploded. So first, I'm going to ask one question. What do you think about it? That's the first thing. The second thing that I want to piggyback onto that is, did they believe it? I'm going to just ask it that way. Did they honestly believe it, or was it purely just cynical politics?
Well, to start backwards, I guess, and go that way to start. Anyway, did they believe it? I can't read their minds. However, what I can say is that there was not much critical analysis if they did believe it. So I think what the conclusion should be is that because we're critical thinkers, because we understand logic and reasoning, we would have to conclude, no, nobody believed it, but we went along with it to try and extract as much political advantage as possible from it. So not we, but I mean they, the Democrats.
Yeah. So see, I've been divided on this one, man, because I watched Rachel Maddow, and like I said, I was chomping at the bit to hear that one. I wanted to hear Rachel Maddow have her come to Jesus moment, and sounds kind of bad, it's like, oh yes, I want her to come to account, because you need to explain why for the last 2 years, a Rhodes Scholar has been pushing something out that has been completely and entirely false. And go for it.
So, what did she say? Did she have her come to Jesus moment?
So she seems stunned by the whole thing. Like I can't tell, and I couldn't tell if she was stunned that he wasn't guilty of the Trump-Russia stuff, or if it was that Mueller just didn't do the job for him. Like, I couldn't tell which one it was. Is it, oh my God, I'm stunned that there's nothing here for the last year, I'm making this up. Or
I bought that hamburger and it didn't have no beef.
right. How dare the hamburger? But you sold me as a Whopper, there's nothing in it.
Right.
Or if it boils down to, damn it, Mueller didn't do the job for us. He didn't.
Yes, that's right.
And I spent 2 years screaming about this, and now I look like an asshole. Like, I can't tell which one it is, and it might be a little bit of both.
But now they kind of look like the A word from the very beginning, because the whole scenario was not plausible. And what I posted on my Twitter page was, well, at least with Monica Lewinsky, we had the dress.
You had the dress.
But here we don't have the dress. We don't even have the dress.
I'm glad you bring up the Lewinsky thing, because I always ask people, why did Bill Clinton, do they remember the original reason that Bill Clinton was being investigated? Because ultimately it boiled down to Clinton getting impeached, it boiled down to the dress, it boiled down to Lewinsky. But if they remember, the original inciting, if I'm not mistaken, was Whitewater. Nothing to do.
That's right.
Nothing to do with what they got him on. My original 2 years ago, I said this is going to be to bleed Trump dry to see if they can get into other issues. And
that's right. Which is the nature of any investigation, which is why in the first place, I was just, sort of bowled over that that the Republicans would even allow the appointment. But you see, at that time, the FBI was it was still stacked in favor of Hillary.
Yes.
And so now we get the revelations from the emails and everything that has been learned, not from the FBI itself, but from Judicial Watch's Freedom of Information Act request. Yeah. So the FBI still has not been forthcoming with the information, but now we are learning that the FBI had the order out, well, we're not going to touch Hillary. We're going to let Hillary slide. And then we're going to go after these guys. And it was Dennis Kucinich, I believe, who was the very first one, who on national television said, look, this is a coup against the president.
Yes, I kept, it's a soft coup. I mean, I don't know what else you wouldn't call it. I mean, I kept saying, making this point that the same people that were instrumental in letting Hillary Clinton walk were the same people instrumental in making sure this case went on against Trump. And if you listen to McCabe wasn't using this kind of secret information to go after Trump. He just heard Trump saying nice things about Putin and social media stuff, and that seemed to be enough for him to open a counterintelligence case. It's really bizarre. The lens.
Well, yeah, and I have dubbed 2019 the year of truth for me. Well, it's two things. It's truth, unknown truths, and then my adventures. So I'm about to get involved with the Peachtree Road race, the world's largest 10K race. I'm going to go back home and get involved in Peachtree Road race. And
no way, you're going to run the 10K?
Yeah, maybe I can live stream while I'm crawling, because I will not be running, I guarantee you.
Don't fall out. Don't fall out. They're going to joke you. They're going to talk about you.
But here's my truth. Here's the unknown truth for the beginning for the month of April. And that is, I received a phone call. I received a phone call from some no-name individual who was on the other end of the line, who had a very, very thick Russian accent. And they were going to pay me to write critical articles about Hillary Clinton.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm very serious. Yeah, no I said that 2019 is the year where I exposed some truth. So January, I did a truth about Jesse Jackson. February, I did a truth about 4 women members of Congress. And so, and then March, March was month of the women. So I did that then. And so now with you, I'm revealing yet another truth. So
I'm very clear. A person with a thick Russian accent called you in order to pay you money to say bad things about Hillary Clinton in the last election.
Yes, but I smelled a rat. And so I suspected, I didn't know, but I suspected that this was a Hillary Clinton trap in order to ensnare me, because I've had a lot of traps since I've been out of Congress and I've been speaking up on social media. I've had a lot of traps laid before me. And so I figured that this was another trap. So I said to this voice on the other end of the phone that was elaborately orchestrated by somebody who also didn't have a name, who was also orchestrated by somebody whose name, who does have a name that I won't mention. And so it was all this, kind of, secretive kind of stuff going on. And then I said to that person, I said, you don't need to pay me to do what I'm going to do anyway. Click.
It's like, so I'm going to go after her regardless. You don't have to give me money for this. Yeah.
That's right. And so I, went ahead and I did what I was going to do. And I wrote articles like out the yazoo,
Yeah.
exposing Hillary and Haiti, because I was particularly outraged about what her henchmen had done in Haiti repeatedly. And so
Please explain.
most
Just so
recent,
the people may not know. For Hillary Clinton's, or you can say the Clintons' relationship with Haiti in regards to the money that they took and the things they did there.
oh my gosh. Well, the first crime was that Haiti was in the midst of its presidential election, and there was someone that I know who was running for president, who was an Aristide person, who was a Rene Preval person. And the US State Department had said that Preval was not their kind of guy. This particular presidential candidate by the name of Jude Celestin also was a part of from the Aristide tradition, and was friends with Hugo Chavez, and would have taken Haiti further into the ALBA, because remember, Hugo Chavez went to Haiti to say thank you because Venezuela was liberated. The first flag, the tricolor, which is the three colors of the flag of the current Venezuela flag, was first raised in Haiti. So this was monumental for Hugo Chavez to go back to Haiti to say thank you. And it's because Simon Bolivar went to Haiti, went to Jamaica. The Haitians gave war soldiers and ships to Simon Bolivar so that he could liberate South America. So this is a part of the history, of course, that we're never told, but a part of the history that Haitians continue to have to pay for, because they were in firm solidarity with the colonized peoples of the world, and they dedicated themselves, after they liberated themselves from Napoleon Bonaparte, they dedicated themselves to freeing other people who were under the colonial yoke. Yeah. So what Hillary Clinton did was the Clintons went in and they moved into Haiti as if they owned Haiti. They were the viceroys, the gouverneurs of Haiti. And then what they decided to do was they began to pick Haiti's leaders. When Jude Celestin won, that would have been to carry on the tradition of Aristide. But instead, they put Mickey Michel Martelly in, who's a very rude and crude hip hop guy. That was Hillary's choice. And they cheated in the elections in exactly the same way that Hillary cheated Bernie Sanders. They cheated in the election, sent Cheryl Mills down to Haiti. Cheryl Mills, now this is all extremely questionable. How does Cheryl Mills get to read out the elections from the Haiti presidential election in the first place? Why? But at any rate, she was accorded that ability to do so. And then what did she do? She read out the wrong names. How do we know this? Because the president of the Haitian Presidential Election Commission later on exposed the perfidy. And basically what he said was he was shocked, he was scared to death, but that he wasn't going to speak up and say, Cheryl, you're wrong. So the stage was set for Martelly to become the president of Haiti. Now, what did Martelly do? Martelly then gave contracts with precious Haiti money to friends of the Clinton Foundation. And moreover, Martelly gave Hillary Clinton's brother a gold mine. Well, the Haitians had said that they weren't going to mine any more gold until they got their gold back that the U.S. stole when the U.S. sent the soldiers in back in about 1914 or so.
Wow.
So there's a whole history here, and Hillary Clinton has just become like the Clinton Foundation has become the colonial master of Haiti, not to mention the 33 kids that were being trafficked out of Haiti that the Haitian authorities found and prevented their crossing of the border into the Dominican Republic. Hillary Clinton personally intervenes for the trafficker to get the trafficker out of custody in Haiti. So all of these things, I mean, it's just crime after crime after crime. Now, the Haitians were the very first group that vocally supported Donald Trump. And so when Donald Trump met with the Haitian president, who Hillary did it a second time, was selected by Hillary and the US State Department to lead Haiti, that was a betrayal by Donald Trump of those very people who constitute his base, but are not, he recognizes it as his base, I guess. I don't know what he recognizes, but it was a betrayal of the people who endorsed him in the very beginning and gave him the kind of lift that he needed in order to cross the finish line first.
Trump doesn't care. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think he cares. I mean, Donald Trump went through an election campaign and he said, I'm going to give you big, beautiful health care. I'm going to increase the minimum wage. I'm not going to raise, I'm not going to lower my taxes. Like, he said whatever he had to say to go to the finish line. I don't think he cared. I mean, even Trump cared. I mean, he was willing, his base, the people who voted for him, he allowed those people to go without a job or without a payment for weeks. Like, you're talking about almost like an entire month. Not because there was any emergency, not because it was anything real or major, but because of a political campaign pledge that he wanted to see, see to it get solved. I don't think he cares for the Haitian.
Well, here's the thing. If he doesn't care, or maybe he just doesn't know. I mean, now with the Hollywood College University scam that has been exposed, now we know a lot of people got into Ivy League colleges and the Wharton School and probably every place else.
Dr. Dre, his daughter.
My alma mater, University of Southern California, we know that, and even Tufts University is involved in that. Harvard is involved in that. So, I mean, all of the sort of maybe first tier schools that are involved in that, we know now that people got in, and we knew all along. We didn't know about the Hollywood side of it, but we knew that there were these legacy programs, and you give $500,000, you give $1 million, and your child is assured a slot. So maybe it's that he doesn't know. But if we are to believe those who have written the books about the Trump administration thus far, it seems to me to be clear that Trump did intend to bring the troops out of Afghanistan, to bring the troops from Syria, to effect a peace between the United States and North Korea, to stop the bombing in other places where the United States is currently bombing. That much, I believe, is extremely clear.
Yes.
And so Paul Craig Roberts did an article, I think it's just yesterday or maybe the day before, where he talks about the 2 years of the Mueller investigation really tying Trump's hands and making Trump have to compromise with the very people that he campaigned against and who are the most ardent against him. And that's the Ziocons, sort of the Western Ziocons, because of course we know that his friends are the Eastern Ziocons, the East European Ziocons, but it's the Hillary Clinton Ziocons that basically are against him. And so he had to compromise with them. And so that's how we get Pompeo. That's how we get Bolton. Now, here's my thing. At every step along the way after the November election, what I did was I took to Twitter, especially since, I was in Facebook jail. And so I took to Twitter and I made suggestions. If candidate Trump, now president-elect, soon to become President Trump, really wants to drain the swamp, then these are the individuals I recommend for his cabinet and to serve as his advisors. Why? Because you need someone who's been inside the swamp, who knows the swamp, but who emerged clean and not a swamp monster. Those people exist. Like, for example, General Taguba, who wrote the report on Abu Ghraib. We all know what a travesty Abu Ghraib was, how embarrassing it was for those of us with a conscience and US passports to understand what US soldiers, the depravity with which US soldiers had engaged average ordinary Iraqis. And
Yes.
we know that they were average ordinary Iraqis because we know what Musharraf even wrote in his book, that average ordinary Pakistanis were picked up and caught up in this so-called war against terror.
Yeah.
So these average ordinary Iraqis were tortured in the worst kind of way at Abu Ghraib prison, and General Taguba was tasked with writing the report on it after we had the wonderful whistleblower to blow the whistle on what was going on there. And so General Taguba said, I am, my mother raised me to be a genteel Southern girl. And so I don't use language like this, but I'm going to say, I'm damned if I do tell the truth, and I'm damned if I don't tell the truth. And so he said, I'm going to tell the truth. And so he wrote the truth. And of course, then he was forced to retire, and the whole thing happened.
Yeah.
But he told the truth. So he went into the swamp and he came out not a swamp monster. We have another general, since Trump really likes generals, it seems. So we have another general, and that's Honore. If you remember, after Hurricane Katrina, General Honore went into New Orleans and he just took care of business. Yeah. But what we learned was that Michael Chertoff had directed the city of New Orleans to hire Blackwater, and we had Blackwater actually patrolling U.S. streets, which is the first time it ever happened, but I guarantee you that it won't be the last time. And this is a travesty. It's a constitutional travesty. So, but General Honore went into New Orleans and took care of business. So this is another person who was in the swamp and who came out clean. So we have these individuals who are not swamp monsters, but have been inside the swamp. And so if we are able to, how can I say, to keep, I don't exactly know how I want to say this, but that these that we're not creating more swamp monsters,
right?
We don't want to create more swamp monsters, and that is something that is possible for us to do. I believe that it's possible for us.
I understand where you're getting at. You're making this point of, it's not, if the goal of it really is to drain the swamp, then you kind of have to pay attention to the things that created that swamp in the first place. Like, there are incentives there that drive the behaviors that create the conditions. And if you want to do something different, then you need to bring in people who at the very least know what to look for.
Exactly. Thank you for being so eloquent. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Trump had any intention on draining the swamp. I give you an example. I always think about I always say people are policy. Like the people who you put into positions dictate the policy that's going to take place in those positions. I agree with you. I do think originally he went with this thought of being less hawkish. I think that was, I agree with you. One of the things that came up was that Trump was annoyed that he kept being put in these positions where he had to drop a bomb, like in Syria, where he's like, God, you guys keep forcing me into this position where I need to drop bombs. So I agree with that point. I guess, for example, Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos wasn't put in that position because Democrats pushed him. Betsy DeVos was put in that position because Donald Trump put another billionaire. He from his standpoint, I think he was going to take a particular tact, and regardless of what he said, in order to seal the deal during the election, when he got into that office, he had a very clear idea of what he was going to do. Now, I agree, less hawkish, but from the standpoint of putting more money in the pockets of people who are like him, I think that had already been a foregone conclusion. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. Let me ask you this, because we
my internet is stopped.
Go for it.
Jamarl?
Can you hear me?
No. My internet.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's going in and out.
Was stopped.
Okay,
but
let's go to the election.
Okay,
let's go to
now.
2020 before we break. So we have a 2020 election where there are going to be apparently 123 Democrats that are going to be on the stage in order to vie for the presidential election. This includes everything from a socialist or somebody who calls himself a socialist to an anti-war candidate, to a candidate that is against bankers but is absolutely a capitalist. You have neolibs who go with this purely identity politics, ignoring the economic realities of things. And then you have, a few random people who I have no idea what they're pushing for. I don't think this election would have been this way if Hillary Clinton had won. That's the first point. Meaning she wouldn't have been challenged. And you certainly would have got these policy positions where people are talking like Medicare for all. You're talking about expansion of Social Security. You're talking about like stuff that 8 years ago would have been, there's no unknown. Like even when Obama was running, they were going with, he advertised or he publicized a public option, at which point when he gets in office, that goes away.
Yes.
Is it me? This seems different, or this seems somewhat distinct, at least in my lifetime, with regards to, I guess you can say, potentials for what's going to come about, I guess you can say, in 2020. Meaning you have a potential for something potentially real or just same old, but that potential for something is something different, at least in my lifetime. Or am I wrong on this? Is this a mirage? Is this an illusion? Am I not seeing this clearly?
That's a very difficult question. And it's a question, I think, that requires a little bit more inspection. Mm-hmm. And the reason I think it requires a little bit more inspection is because of something that I actually wrote about in the 2018 election, was the introduction to the highest levels that I am aware of George Soros into US politics. And I think that is something that makes a difference. And I think so I need to know, so what I need to know is who's backing whom. And I need to understand who's writing the checks. So, and what is it? It's not the young Democrats. It's the,
oh, you mean Justice Democrats?
It's the Young Turks.
Justice
remember?
Yeah.
Yes. So now, where does their money come from, and who's backing them?
Katzenberg.
Okay. So now, once I understand where the money is coming from, which I have my suspicions because I checked the 2018 election, and I've written a paper about it actually, and I should forward that paper to you, so you can see the extent to which 2018 was basically moderated by this huge pot of money that made itself available on the Democratic Party side in a way that had never happened before,
Wait, what do you
and
mean?
all
You
the
said,
way down to individual candidates.
explain it. What do you mean this never happened before? That there hasn't been money available in other campaigns, or you mean this was made available in a different way?
Yes, there is money in previous campaigns, but so for example, we've got so one, let's talk about campaign finance,
Mm-hmm.
which is getting into more than I want to get into. But so basically, you had McCain-Feingold, which was the law that changed campaign finance, and it changed the way in which campaigns are financed to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, what happened was it left a hole as big as a Mack truck driving through for certain types of finance. And so what the public was told was campaign finance reform was actually campaign finance deform.
Mm.
And so now you've got a hole in the campaign finance architecture that is big enough to drive that a drunk truck driver can get through. Okay, so now what exactly does that mean? How do we operationalize this? So you have a room full of individuals, a room full of billionaires, and these billionaires decide that we're going to divide the United States, and they all have the same mentality. They all have the same sort of policy outlook, what they want. And so they divide the country into different parts, and it doesn't have to be billionaires, it can be multimillionaires as well. And so these multimillionaires say, okay, and this is what we're going to do. Then what they do is they have their political arms select candidates. Now, the political arms that's working with them actually also happens to be the political arm of the various political parties. So it might be the DCCC, it might be the DSCC, it could be on the Republican side, it's the Republican equivalent of the DCCC. So, and it's the Republican equivalent of the DSCC. So you've got these Democratic and Republican Party organizations that are committed to screening and financing their selected candidates for the House and the Senate. You have them, and they then are tied to the individuals in the room that are sitting at the table. And so then what happens is that those individuals sitting at the table write the big checks to the DCCC. This is part of what the way the Hillary Clinton 2016 campaign operated was kind of this way. And there were, people looking into this, but moreover, even more involved are these certain individuals who then write checks directly to candidates and the PACs and the 527s associated with those candidates. So basically, you've got the situation in the US where the people sitting at the table, those are the people you need to know. You cannot go by the pronouncement that these small donors gave $25 and, we have thousands of them. Because, and here's why, because the rules were changed so that you can get the big check donation in the name of the small donors. Now, what happened with me and Earl Hilliard when we were targeted by AIPAC for elimination from the Congress was that the same names that showed up on Artur Davis, who was running against Earl Hilliard, that showed up on Arthur Davis's FEC report, those names also showed up on Denise Majet's FEC report. And then, and
multiples.
Right. So you get,
yeah.
Right. So you get donations made in the names of individuals. Is from the individuals, the multimillionaires that are sitting in the room at the table. So this is why we need to understand who's sitting at the table in the 2020 election. And then we, the people, need to have a countervailing force that will protect us and project our own choices for candidates. We cannot allow the mostly men who are sitting at the table in the room to determine the outcome of the elections, because remember, they are playing on both sides. They're playing Democrats, they're playing Republican. And that's why we get no policy change. So it's incumbent upon we the people, those of us who call ourselves patriots, those of us who say that the Constitution comes first and foremost. The Bill of Rights has been eroded enough. We want to protect the Bill of Rights. And mind you, one of the things that I remind those people who interview me, the sort of right people on the right, the people that we're supposed to be afraid of. Especially we Black people supposed to be afraid of them, but I'm from the South, so I grew up with them, so I can't be afraid. I'm not afraid of them. But those people, one of the things that I say to them is that your original patriots were the slaves who were freed, who decided to get involved in politics. And I'm thinking about the first Black man who ran for president on the National Party ticket. You know what his platform was? The Bill of Rights, the Constitution. So all of these people, there was a time, you see, when the Bill of Rights and the Constitution applied to everybody but us. And we were the ones who were championing the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. That's a part of history that we must never forget, and we must not allow anybody else to forget. So when you decide who your base is, you patriots out there, when you decide who your base is, you cannot decide away those people who are the most fervent believers in the Constitution, the ones who fought to protect the Bill of Rights because the Bill of Rights protected them. Now, of course, no one is protected by the Bill of Rights because the Bill of Rights has been so eroded. The Constitution has been so eroded. And so now it's incumbent upon us to figure out ways in which we can reassert ourselves and eliminate this threat, because the threat is very real. And you've got the concentration of the technology in the hands of a very few people who can cut you off of YouTube, cut you out of Facebook. And so this is a clear and present danger. And that's why it's also important that we support these alternative platforms that will give us the opportunity to have unfettered freedom of speech.
The sad part about it is this has become kind of like a digital commons. Excuse me. Whereas before people would, I guess you would send an email or letter, or people would talk on newspapers or televisions. And at this point, it's become Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, whatever the other networks are. And fact of the matter is that's not within the public's control at all. I mean, granted, newspapers weren't in the public's control, but this feels different. This is not the same thing as a newspaper. This is something that the people themselves, for the most part, put out the information, and yet they don't own the information to which they put out. It's a very bizarre reality.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And so that's why now, I got criticized recently because I still have a Gmail account, but that's my public account. But but I have taken those precautions, and I use alternative platforms, and I pay for the privilege of using them, and that's what it's going to come down to, because you're right. We don't own. There are alternative platforms like Minds, for example, but the reach is so small.
Yeah.
And herein lies another danger, I think, in HR 1, which was touted as the election reform package of legislation that was touted by Nancy Pelosi. It also, beware, the people should beware anything, any proposal that takes the prerogatives and rights away from legislators and puts it in the hands of a private entity, which is what
This is Nancy Pelosi's reform of the
does
electoral system,
for
like the
redistricting
workers'
and
voters'
election.
rights. Yeah,
That's right. So so part of that proposal was that you take redistricting, reapportionment. So it's a two-pronged process. It's reapportionment and redistricting. So you take that out of the hands of the legislators and you put it in the hands of private individuals who constitute some kind of commission. Well, I'm sorry. I want to be able to vote out of office the person who infringes on my rights for representation, because
yeah,
this is the ultimate right. Is that why do we vote? We don't vote just for the heck of voting. We vote to have representation. And I don't think that putting it in anything that centralizes power and authority and decision making, I'm not in favor of it. I'm with the young people who now say that we have to decentralize everything. Yes, absolutely decentralize it, and don't put hands in the power. Because I watched what happened in California when you had reapportionment in the hands of the Berman brothers. And so the Berman brothers were able to, they took a nice hefty fee from every member of Congress. I think it was $20,000 back at the time that every member of Congress paid to have their interests protected by the Berman brothers, instead of letting the legislature do the redistricting and the reapportionment the way it's supposed to be done.
that's a racket.
It is a racket. And whenever you see centralization of power, you're going to see a racket created. So that's why we've got to decentralize. And that's why platforms like yours are so important, because now we get to discuss things that would never, look, this was never discussed. The Democrats touted HR 1, HR 1. Well, in the first place, probably half of them didn't even read it.
Well, most
because
of them,
that's the nature of.
I mean, not just Democrats. The legislation will come out and it will be like 5,000 pages, and they're like, "Okay, we have a vote on it." It's like it just came out. There's no way you went through 5,000 pages.
I know. We're in a very pitiful state. We're in a pitiful state right now.
I would say this.
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Well, I was just going to make the point that but the reason for HR 1, I mean, the voting in this country is atrocious. I give an example, gerrymandering. So you have a situation where congressmen who have political objectives within the process, and by the way, I'm saying this, I don't disagree with you. I don't like this giving a private company this particular, I don't like that idea. I think that's a horrible idea, giving a private company the rights to this. I agree with you. It needs to be more decentralized. I guess I was pointing the finger at, the problems that we have in this country with regards to voting and the electoral system. It pushes people into wanting some level of a solution. And, that, of course, that makes it more susceptible to HR 1 as opposed to other options.
Yeah.
I understand your point on this. I think your point in basically for the politics thing or the election is who's paying them. And if you want to know what they're going to do when they get in office, look at who's putting money in their pockets. Is that fair?
That's right. That's right.
I guess you can make that argument about any election, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's like who's putting money in their pockets. And the sad part about it is it becomes harder to determine, right? Like I know
Yes.
various peoples are saying now this thing of, oh, we're not taking corporate PAC money. Like, so Cory Booker, come on, all these people, oh, we're not taking corporate PAC money, you know? And I think their point is we're not being bought. So this
But that's not true.
exactly.
This
doesn't get into
it's
the
not
and
true
stuff like that. I think
because
that's what we're getting at before.
they don't need to take the corporate PAC money when you've got the 10 men in the room sitting around the table. You see,
Now,
that is the secret now. And
is
that's why
everyone-
they all can say the same thing, but you've got to find out who those men are that are sitting around that table in that room.
Is this what gets to bundlers, where they're talking about like bundling a bunch of money from various sources, and you know, where it comes across as if there were small discrete payments as opposed to all of this like lump sum of money? Am I saying this right?
Yes, that's what bundlers do. And so you have an organization like Act Blue, for example,
Yeah.
that will bundle money. You have Emily's List that bundles money. But see, you have to be endorsed by them too. There's still a racket. So the the best campaign finance reform is to shine the light on the individuals that are in the room. Now, how can we do that? That takes investigative journalism, because the laws are such that they can remain shrouded in secrecy. And with the Supreme Court decisions, Citizens United, and there was the companion case. Not only can you raise unlimited money amounts of money, but you can also spend unlimited amounts of money. So we need to understand the players in the room. I had one current sitting senator, Debbie Stabenow, told me that she said there's a whole different set of players when you run for Senate. So in the House, you have, for House races, you have one group of men who are sitting around the table and they're making decisions. For the Senate, you have a completely different set of people sitting around the table making finance, whose campaign they're going to finance. And you literally have to dance to their tune. So basically, my PhD is in leadership. What we understand is that the people that we think are leaders are not leaders at all. They actually are followers.
That's amazing. I mean, I always assumed that there's something behind the scenes. Like I always assume that there's like the people who get in office, they're not getting office on their own powers. Like it's like the money, the resources, the stuff like that that's necessary in order to run an election. It's to some degree done because there's a very limited supply of people with cash. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
Yes.
There's not one of those days where the overwhelming majority of the country is cash. Most of the people don't even have $500 in the bank. So
that's right.
It's like the people who are, like you said, sitting around the room making decisions. I guess I didn't think it was that direct, though. I always assumed.
Yes, it's that direct. It's that explicit. Yes, that is exactly the methodology that is used. And that's why people can't get the policies that they want, because, you know, ultimately, ultimately what I really care about is policy. I don't, you know,
yeah.
But the reason we don't have the breakthrough and people think, okay, oh yeah, now we've got a breakthrough. Well, that's a breakthrough that is still made by people sitting in a room around a table.
It's choice.
Now,
it's a breakthrough when they choose it's a breakthrough.
Exactly.
How do you get around that? And I'm got to be honest, this is going in an area where I didn't think it was going to go. But how is this? How do you break this? Because this is clearly not something that's done through electoral politics. I mean, if the rules set where the people in the room is you know the reason why you're not getting the policies that you want, at that point the legal structure is a restraint on action, meaning it's this thing of that gum up the works of trying to get things done, not because it's done that way in honest, but because it's done that way in order to kind of create this illusion that something is getting done, or the reason that you don't get policy is because, the Democrats and Republicans are just bumping heads, and you have these, this contest of honorable gentlemen who are in this and you find out, well, that's not it at all. There are people with certain interests, and that interest has fiscal control of a sorts, not because they have any kind of godlike power, unless you want to call money this kind of godlike power, but that our political system runs on cash. And that ultimately the people with the cash, in large part, make the decisions on what takes place, and dictate policy to some degree to the people who are in the room.
There are exceptions. And like, for example, when I got elected, I became the Democratic nominee with $25,000. Is all I had.
Wow.
That's all I raised. And so now, what's the solution that would allow us to get back to those kinds of candidates? I have put forward an idea that has not been financed. And so I'm thinking that when I come home, I will do that. But right now, I want to have my 2019, my year of truth and adventure. So I'm doing my road race, and then in December going to China. I need to invite you if you want to go to China with a group of us.
We still have.
Yeah, we're gonna walk. We're gonna walk the Great Wall. Since we're talking about walls. So that's my 2019. But maybe in 2020, I'll actually get the opportunity to put this idea forward. And I called it my power cells idea. And I've been talking about it now for about a year and a half or so, about a year and change. Mm-hmm. So basically, it comes as a result of my studies in leadership and change. So basically, there's a set of behavioral sciences around leadership and change theory. So now and then my analysis of what it is that afflicts our country. Well, you and I can sit and talk, but those people that we're supposed to be afraid of, well, we can't sit and talk in the same room at the same table. So the idea is for us, which is real leadership, is providing the context within which these dialogues of the heart can take place, or these conversations of the heart can take place. So I'm not so much concerned about your language, because quite frankly, you don't know how to talk to a Black person. You don't know how to talk to a Black leftist, so-called communist, but I'm not. But you don't know how to, because you've never been around this. And our country is as segregated today as it was in the 1950s and the 1960s. So we unsegregate ourselves voluntarily. And we do this through the creation, state by state, of power cells. And then what we do is we take them utilizing the approaches and the tools that have been worked out by means of research in the behavioral sciences. You take them, it's called action research. So you take these individuals that span the political spectrum in every kind of way, you take them and then you walk them through these changes, so that what starts out as a group of disparate people ends up being a team of people who are working toward the same goals. And you do that 50 times across the country. And then what you've built then is the nucleus for a whole different kind of politics. Yes, I'm Black and I'm proud. Yes, I'm white and I'm proud. Yes, I'm Latina and I'm proud. And yes, we occupy the same community and we have the same problems, and these are the problems, and these are the solutions that we together have come up with. So I have written a paper about how we can do this. It's just a matter of actually getting it started. And I have 1,000 people already who have said, okay, I want in. So it's just me being financially free enough to stop working and then do this full time. And if we do this full time, I believe it's a paradigm shifter that allows us to overcome all of the divisions, the walls of divisions. Remember, it was Bobby Kennedy who said that one act for justice creates a tiny ripple that, when combined with millions of other acts of justice, is able to wash down the mightiest walls of injustice. And so that's what we, through the power cells and through our identification of common problems and common solutions, that we end up creating these tiny ripples that become a torrent that end up washing down the mightiest walls of oppression. And then we can live with each other in a whole different kind of way.
I would love to read that paper.
Okay, great. Then I will send it to you.
Well, one last question, and I gotta ask this. You mentioned white power. So I'm gonna ask this question. You didn't mention white power. There's this thing of each group having a certain degree of pride within itself. You know, all experiences
Yes.
are valid. Reparations. This conversation has taken somewhat of a life of its own. I've taken a few hits from this by a position that I think is perfectly legit with in regards to the way I see this. What is I'm curious on your take on this. I mean, like I said, you've been doing this. You've been in the political sphere longer than I have. I don't know if you're more shocked by the reparations conversation than I am. I have a certain perspective of the world, so this blows me away that we're having a conversation. What do you make of all this? If I don't know if you've been paying attention to it. There's been this conversation up from the American descendants of slaves pushing on the campaigns, various campaigns, particularly Sanders, to accept this idea of supporting reparations in his, I guess you can say, political campaign. What's her name? Elizabeth Warren came out saying she was pushing for reparations that wasn't reparations at all. And just like the other candidates, they were pushing in some cases for reparations that wasn't reparations at all. Unless it's specific to the descendants of slaves, I don't know if you're going to call it reparations. I mean, after all, it wasn't that, white women weren't enslaved. It was slaves. What do you think of the talk of this? Do you think there's two questions? Do you think it flies politically? And do you think there's a legitimacy to it in and of itself? And third question, divisiveness. Still with me? Uh-oh, I think Cynthia McKinney jumped off and ran on that question. I'm joking. Where she is, there have been internet issues. So she told me in advance that she may have internet issues during the course of this interview. I told her I was going to try to keep this to 20 minutes. I think we've blown past the 20-minute mark. So this is more so on my fault. So I am going to save that question for another day. And maybe I hit her phone, email, something like that, and we come together again so we can have this conversation. Guys, I want to thank her for coming on to the show, because I always love when Cynthia comes on. Professor McKinney comes on. We always have a great conversation, and I think we engage with one another almost like we're relatives. So I want to give her my thanks right now, and I'm going to send her a thank you within the email itself. Guys, I want to thank all of you for joining us for this conversation. I have like two questions, I think, that I started off with, going with the election itself, but also of the Trump stuff. And her being behind the scenes, she has a very particular perspective of things. Like, it's me looking at things saying, this is most likely true. It's another thing, somebody being behind the scenes and able to see it for themselves. So shout out to Professor McKinney for coming onto the show. And I want to thank all of you for joining me. This is Progressive Soapbox. I am signing off, and I will see you guys bright and early in the morning. Tomorrow, I should be here all day. So we have a ton of shows to get to, including the Cenk Uygur, one. And Uygur essentially saying, I wasn't in this Russia chant. I would give him this. At some point he might have slid when he realized this was nonsense. But in the beginning, he was firmly in this Russia collusion camp. And that's probably going to be my first video tomorrow morning. Oh, you're back. I was like, oh, she ran away when she heard that question. I was okay.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello, hello? Can you hear me? Hello, hello? Are you still there?
Oh.
There you are. Can you hear me? Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello, hello?
Okay, sorry, I forgot to put my headphones on. I'm supposed to be leaving, so I'm past my time, and now my camera is telling me the camera's not working.
Well, your camera was never on.
Can you see me?
Well, I can hear you. We can never see you per se. Like your camera was always off. Like it was always a picture of you as opposed to the image.
You never saw me?
No. But I thought you knew that. When we
No.
When we started off, you said it says the camera's not working. I was like, yeah, fair enough. And you just went on to another topic. I just kind of thought you just knew.
No. I got up extra early to put on some lipstick.
I'm sorry. Because I heard you, so I was like, let me make sure I'm good. And then you was like, oh, God, it says the camera's not working.
Why is the camera not working?
It's okay. I'm not bothered per se. But
okay.
It's okay. We can make sure.
Yeah, well, anyway, because I have only 5 minutes and then I have to split. The question on reparations. First of all, let me just say that Western jurisprudence is built around making damaged victims whole. And it is absolutely clear that we have a whole community of damaged victims and not only the United States, but that was the nature of colonialism.
Yes.
And I appreciate the CARICOM countries for putting reparations on the table from Britain, not only from England, but Spain and the United States as well. So am I in favor of reparations? Absolutely.
Yes.
Am I in favor of making the African-American descendants of slaves whole? Absolutely.
Yes.
And part of my am I in favor of the Germans making the Namibians whole? Absolutely, because they went down there and committed genocide against the Herero people.
Yeah.
Am I in favor of the Spaniards making, oh my gosh, all of the Latin American peoples whole? They genocided the indigenous people. So am I in favor of France making Haiti whole? Absolutely. So this is just a part of jurisprudence. And in fact, what we cannot and must not ever do is lose sight of the fact that certain people have been made whole. Certain people were made whole through the reparations process.
Yes.
Why not African Americans to be made whole? Now, that is what required, but in order to be made whole, then we have to know the story of our enslavement. We have to know the entire story. And therein lies the importance, I believe, of who the slave traders were, who the slave holders were. I mean, there's a whole lot more to this than just meets the eye. Mm-hmm. And some people have been shrouded in secrecy. For example, you have, what's that actor's name who came out and said, yeah, I have to admit my people were involved in the slave trade. So that actor, I can't remember his name. I think he was married to Jennifer Lopez.
Okay.
So the short of it is yes. And I believe that this is part of a long-standing issue of why our community is so deprived in every kind of way that you can imagine. And, you know, I walked into a store in rural Kentucky and they had the Mammy dolls there.
Oh.
So basically what I did was I bought every Mammy doll until I didn't have any more dollars. And that became the centerpiece. Now I go into all these rural stores when I'm traveling in, you know, rural America, and I buy the Mammy dolls. And, you know, you have the lawn jockeys. I haven't graduated to that yet, but when I come back home, then I'm going to buy up the lawn jockeys. But, you know, these are ways in which we have been so thoroughly denigrated at every turn. Our lips, our nose, our hair, our skin color. Now people are dying to, you know, from the Botox to put in their lips, you know, but putting it in their behinds, you know, when our round behinds were ridiculed. And so, you know, you talk about cultural violence and structural violence. We have been subjected to that from our very first arrival in this country. And so therefore, if there's a way to make amends for that, first of all, there needs to be an apology, not just for the lynchings, but there needs to be an acknowledgement. I guess before you get to an apology, you have an acknowledgement.
Yeah, you sound
and
like
so, yeah. So there's got to be an acknowledgement of all of this. And so, and the only way we can get that is through this interaction, because left among themselves, they will continue to scoff at, you know, the idea of white supremacy and that sort of thing. And so I do a lot of interviews with exactly the people who do this kind of scoffing. And I just remind them, I just cannot let the moment pass. I have to say something, but, you know, at one point we will be able to speak on this in a way that I believe is more healing, because we do need to do the healing as well.
I remember James Baldwin. He was at a White House, I think it's called White House press conference, in one of his interviews. And this was, if I'm not mistaken, one of the last few interviews that James Baldwin did. And, you know, you could look at him and tell he's tired of this conversation. Like one of the people asked him at the press conference, he says, you know, don't you people, you know, shouldn't you just get over it? And, you know, you've had X number of years, and you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just move on. And you guys are just kind of making hay out of it. And you could tell, like, of, you know, half of his life, if not more, was spent hearing stuff like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it gives, and I got to be honest, that shapes my perspective of the world with regards to whether or not I think it's like, do I think it's, oh, yes. Do I think it's politically feasible? Oh, that's a different question. You know what I mean? Charles Cavan, living ancestors are entitled to any debts owed. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much, Cynthia, Professor McKinney, everyone. She and let me see. I want to give your books and everything else. I'm putting those at the bottom of I guess you can say in the summary. But How the United States Creation Whole Countries. I love that name. Ain't Nothing Like Freedom, and the Illegal War on Syria. Professor McKinney, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys, I'm going to end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. And